142 days straight. It's been quite an adventure. A few things I think some people are missing right now is purpose, meaning, and a why. I felt like some of the meaning and the purpose found me. Liam, my little man, he's a good dude. He has yet to throw his first temper tantrum. We have a lot of fun around here. It's one thing that's nice about Seattle is there's so many different options and things that you can get into. From the mountains to the Museum of Flight, the zoo, the waterfront, the aquarium. Whether we're running on the mall. There's just so many different places to play. He has his own little Audi. He drives all around Kirkland. He's a good driver. We built a bunk bed, have some gymnast rings that come down. We just anything we're doing, painting, we're having a good time, and I've truly been blessed in that regards. But Uber Lyft, I needed flexibility more than anything else. I needed to say from Monday to Sunday I'm free. It's hard to beat the flexibility. Since then, I became one of Seattle's busiest drivers. Even today, I picked up 3 people I picked up before. I always love picking people up for the second, third, fourth, seventh time. It happens. This month I'll be 4 years of doing it, and I've I'll have over 21,400 rides. You see the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've stories for days. I've met some amazing people. I've learned things that I'll never forget. I've been fortunate. I've had a 5.0 perfect rating on both platforms for all but maybe 6 months. Even Uber, it's a little harder. One negative rating and throws you off that 5.0 status. But I've had some fun with it. I've made my mistakes. I look at it more as like progress over perfection. Um, but I just met such a wide variety of people. It's one of the most interesting jobs you can have out there, and I've tried to make the most of it. In the last 4 years, I think there's 4 federal holidays I didn't work. I haven't been on a date, nothing with a girl for 4 years. It's about priorities. I mean, some divorces are easier than others. So after 2 years, I won the 50-50 custody. The only issue there is every few months since I've either on the cusp of court or I'm back in court. Um, but I just try to set my priorities and then try to do what I can. The things I think about, one thing with my son, even with the different races and something I taught him is I showed him a video of a collegiate runner that had fallen during a race and she gets back up and she wins a race. But if you ask him right now, like, what do you do if you fall down? Get back up. He doesn't hesitate. There's another video of a hurdler that did the same thing. But it's like, what am I in control over? What am I not in control over? What's the next best step? And go from there. One book I've been through, Principles by Ray Dalio. He took from a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom. He started Bridgewater there to make it to what it is today. It's one of the biggest hedge funds out there. And one a nugget I received from that book, he talks about it's not about who is president. It's not about the economy. It's not about your feelings. It's not about what's right or wrong. And it's not about what is fair or unfair. It's all about the next best step. What's the next best step you can do? I think about that. Other people, I think about David Goggins, his story, incredible. Or Viktor Frankl, his book, Man's Search for Meaning. If you want a book to make your bed feel more comfortable, he was a doctor in psychology and ended up going to 4 different concentration camps. What it took to persevere and survive some of the worst monstrosities of what mankind has to offer. Or Marcus Aurelius, there's always somebody but that has it worse. He's one of the last great emperors of Rome. His plague, starvation, a crumbling country. He took care of his family. He took care of his people. One of the things I love that I heard was the man that's never been challenged is the man that's never lived. You know, I just thought that if we think about that, the person that's never been challenged is the person that's never lived. Anything that you had to work hard towards always means something more. It's so much easier to find problems and solutions. And I try to focus on solutions. Sometimes it's definitely easier said than done. So I think about ways and solutions and focus on that. How can I improve mentally, spiritually, physically? I've done different chapters. I've done different challenges along the way. Last year I finished up 200 runs in 200 days. I was talking to my sister, and one thing I've always loved, 10, 12 years ago, my dad did 100 runs in 100 days. And, he's one of those people, when he says he's going to do something, I don't question it. It's somebody I trust more than anybody. And when I was talking to her, she's like, "All right, we're starting. I'm starting today, minimum 2 miles." And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. I need to think about this. I need to like mentally prepare." So I started a few days later, and we both finished the 100 runs in 100 days, and then ended up doing 200 runs in 200 days. I probably did a total of, I don't know, 400 miles in those 200 days, but it was one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done. Just to have that check mark, the win for the day, the success, and just flexing a little bit of discipline. There's times that I got finished at 4 in the morning, and the last thing I wanted to do was put running shoes on and bang out a couple miles. Even towards the end of it, my little man, he's like, "Daddy, I want to run with you." So he would grab the stroller, and he would run his 200-300 meters, and then he'd be like, "Break time." He'd jump in the stroller, and then we'd go another 100 meters, and he's like, "All right, I'm ready to run again." And I truly enjoy that, opposed to banging out a mile on the treadmill. He's like, "Daddy, I want to run." So that's what we did. So I think about ways to take care of myself. How can I build myself up mentally, spiritually, physically? I've been through 100 audiobooks in the last few years. Trying to take vitamins. I tried out a way to bed. The atomic habits. Like, what little things can you do to improve? Mentally, spiritually, physically, just to work on yourself to be a better version of yourself. And Alex Hermosi, there's a podcaster who is a successful business owner who now helps out other entrepreneurs. But he said there's a lonely chapter, a chapter where, before you get to where you want to go, then you might have to make sacrifices. And he says, the bigger the dragon, the better the story, the bigger the hero. Winners define themselves by what they did, and losers define themselves by what happened to them. And I love that. I was thinking about it for a number of days, and I even thought, a big part of the story, a big part of the dragon's you. How we know a lot of times what we need to do, it's just a matter of doing it. How hard that might be, and it's less about being the hero. I just want to be a present father. There's a number of times where I've been in the car, and I was seconds away from, or if I went to blow out at a stoplight, my car would have been totaled. And I never know what's going to happen. But at the end of this, I just want my son to know how hard I worked, that I sacrificed, that it was all worth it, no matter what happens. At the end of the day, Daddy did what I taught you to do. Get back up. Cheers.